Something is thriving in the most poisoned forest in Europe. You would expect this place to be a graveyard. The soil beneath these trees still carries the fallout of the worst nuclear accident in history. Every animal that lives here absorbs a dose of radiation every single day that would send a human worker home. And at the top of this contaminated food chain, where the poison should be concentrated the worst, sits a predator that is not just surviving, it is flourishing. There are 7 times more wolves inside the Chernobyl Exclusion Zone than in the clean reserves around it, and the reason why may turn out to be one of the strangest things radiation has ever done to a living thing. To understand why that is so surprising, you have to understand what these wolves are actually living inside. When Reactor 4 exploded in 1986, it scattered radioactive material across the forests and fields for miles. The people left, more than 100,000 of them, evacuated and never allowed back. But the wolves stayed. And decades later, a team of scientists strapped GPS collars fitted with radiation sensors onto them to measure exactly what these animals absorb as they move through the ruins of a human world. The number they got back is hard to sit with. These wolves take in more than 6 times the radiation dose considered safe for a human worker. Not once, not in a bad week, every day of their lives. By every rule we understand about radiation, that should be a death sentence written slowly. And here's where the story turns, because radiation kills in a very particular way, and understanding it is the key to everything that follows. Radiation damages the body by tearing into DNA, the instruction manual coiled inside every cell. Sometimes it strikes the code directly. More often, it smashes into the water inside a cell and shatters it into vicious fragments called free radicals, which then rip through the genetic material like shrapnel. Most of the time, the body catches the damage and repairs it. But push the dose high enough, for long enough, and some of that damage sticks. A mistake gets copied. A cell that should have died keeps dividing, and that runaway division has a name everyone knows: cancer. So a wolf soaking up 6 times the human safety limit every day for its whole life, feeding on prey that ate irradiated plants, should be riddled with tumors. The poison concentrates as it climbs the food chain, and the wolf sits right at the top. It should be the sickest animal in the forest. Instead, its population is 7 times denser than it has any right to be. Something is protecting these animals. The question that has pulled scientists back into that zone year after year is what? The person who has chased that question longest is an evolutionary biologist named Kara Love. She and her colleagues have been studying the Chernobyl wolves since 2014, going into one of the most contaminated places on the planet to draw blood from wild predators. And when they compared that blood against wolves from cleaner ground in Belarus and against wolves from Yellowstone in America, where the radiation is just the normal background of Earth, they found the Chernobyl wolves were genuinely different on the inside. More than 3,000 of their genes were behaving differently from wolves anywhere else. That alone could just be stress. A body under siege behaves strangely, but then they looked closer and found something that makes the hair stand up. They took the human catalog of cancer, the enormous database of the genes that go wrong when tumors form, and they cross-checked it against the wolves. And they found more than 20 cancer-related genes running unusually active in the Chernobyl animals, genes tied, in humans, to how the body defends itself against exactly the kind of disease all that radiation should be causing. The picture that begins to form is almost too neat to believe. The wolves' immune systems, in some of the animals, look altered in a way that resembles a human patient going through radiation therapy, as if their bodies had been quietly rehearsing for the fight their whole lives. And there is a mechanism that could explain how a wild population arrives at that, and it is the oldest and most ruthless force in biology: natural selection. Think about what a lifetime of heavy radiation does to a wolf pack. Some animals, purely by the luck of their genetics, carry versions of these genes that handle the damage a little better. They get sick less, or the sickness slows them down less. So they live a little longer, and they breed a little more, and they pass those genes to their pups. The wolves without that lucky wiring die younger, leave fewer offspring, and fade from the bloodline. Repeat that across generation after generation in a place where the radiation never lets up, and you are watching evolution run and fast forward. The zone becomes a filter. Only the wolves built to endure the poison make it through, and each generation is a little tougher than the last. If that is really what is happening in the forests of Chernobyl, then these animals are doing something that medicine would give almost anything to understand. Adapting in real time to resist the cancers that radiation forces on the body. It is no wonder the story exploded around the world as the tale of Chernobyl's cancer-proof mutant wolves. But here is where an honest telling has to slow down. Because the truth is more careful than the headline, and the scientists themselves are the first to say so. They have not proven the wolves beat cancer. What they have found is a strong, tantalizing signal, not a closed case. The researchers are careful to say they still do not know how the resistance actually works, or even which of two very different things is going on. It could be that the wolves genuinely develop less cancer, or it could be that they get cancer at the same rate as any other wolf, but their altered bodies simply carry the burden better, so the disease slows them down less. Those are not the same story, and the data cannot yet tell them apart. And there is a second, humbler explanation that refuses to go away. Remember what else vanished from this zone. Us. No hunters, no cars on the roads, no farms carving up the forest. For a wolf, humans have always been the deadliest predator of all. And here that predator simply disappeared, so when you see 7 times more wolves than in the reserves next door, how much of that is a genetic shield against radiation, and how much is just the plain, unglamorous fact that nobody is shooting them anymore? The scientists admit it is genuinely hard to pull those two threads apart. The most radioactive forest in Europe is also the one place a wolf can live without fearing a man with a rifle. So the real story of the radioactive wolves is not the comic book one. It is stranger and more honest than that. These are not monsters. They are ordinary gray wolves carrying an extraordinary daily burden, whose bodies may be quietly rewriting themselves to survive a poison we created and then walked away from. The evidence that something has changed inside them is real. What that change means, and how much of their success is biology versus our simple absence, is a question still being answered. Or it would be, if the work had not been ripped apart. The team never got to finish. In 2022, WR swept back into the exclusion zone. Soldiers occupied it. Military vehicles churned the contaminated soil back into the air. Labs were ransacked, equipment stolen, long-running studies frozen mid-stride. Some of the researchers who had spent a decade earning the wolves' secrets never got to return to the field. The zone that had become an accidental laboratory for the most important question in the story, whether life can truly adapt to radiation, was overrun before it could give up its answer. So the wolves are still out there tonight, moving through the dead cities and the silent forest, carrying whatever it is inside them that lets them endure. 7 times too many of them, thriving on a dose that should be killing them, holding the possible secret to resisting the very disease radiation is supposed to cause. And for now, we are left watching from the edge of the fence, with a mystery half solved and taken from us, wondering what those wolves already know how to do. Not great, not terrible, just evolving in the dark while no one was allowed to watch. If you want the parts of Chernobyl the documentaries skip past, stay with us. We are working our way through the whole strange afterlife of that reactor. Subscribe and we'll keep going.